So the question, what role should the federal government play? Well, if you follow and you read the Constitution closely, the federal government should have a very limited role. In my opinion, it should do at most just informing the general public, informing the states, and from there, the state governors, and let the mayors of different cities determine how best to administer this virus situation. I actually agree with the way it's being handled right now, where it's a very localized solution rather than a top-down, one-size-fits-all.
Well, I think the role we are already playing is certainly one of the most significant, and that is we realize that this virus is not going to go away until we conform to the request of the scientists. And so right now, our response is to try to do what the scientists say. And in so doing, we passed a mammoth, the largest in U.S. history, and that is an economic response to the COVID-19 and the fact that millions and millions of Americans are without employment. And it's the response, I think, deals with almost every aspect of life that we could think of. And that is that we try to give the unemployed additional dollars to survive this pandemic, and the fact that many, if not most of American corporations and economic engines are shut down. So our response has been heavy, and we are planning now for what we have called the HEROES Act, which would be the follow-up to the initial economic package that we approved. So I think to do anything less would be insulting to the American public and probably do economic damage to millions and millions of Americans. The HEROES Act is our follow-up legislation. It includes the continuation of the Payroll Protection Program. It includes unemployment benefits and an expansion of economic employment benefits. And that is that in addition to the dollars that people would get normally, there is a $600 check that they would receive. Americans would receive another $1,200 that would be a one-time only payment. And in addition to that, there are provisions for dollars to go to the state, which they would distribute to local communities and municipalities. For example, there would be dollars going to the hospitals, the institutions of education, as well as to municipalities and counties. We were very pleased that we were able to get money that went to both Jackson County as well as the Kansas City municipal area. And so we think that package would be critically important for survival until probably after the first of the year, because the scientists are not giving us any data that would suggest that things will be back to normal by January. Absolutely, the program came out of my committee, so I'm actually one of the principal advocates for the program. There has been nothing that I have seen nor heard from my constituents that would lead me to fight against the inclusion of all of those provisions and others if we can get them as quickly as possible. And by the way, the House has already passed its version of the HEROES Act. We are waiting now for a response from the United States Senate, which has not dealt with the bill, even though they've had it for more than 2 months now.
The phrase "if conditions warrant" is so vague that I'd have to say no, because right now we've already expanded our money supply by 35% in less than a year. The federal budget is already out of whack. We can barely pay interest right now. I would say the solution is not printing more money and giving people more money, but instead follow what the CDC has already said. They said that this virus has a over 99% success rate of getting better, healing from it. We need to reopen the economy. Then the US government wouldn't need to continue paying people this paycheck protection. Yeah, there's no doubt the PPP saved a lot of people. It's actually very interesting. As I've been on this campaign, I've been going out to the rural areas, I've been going to the suburbs, and I've been going into the more impoverished parts of the city. And what I find interesting is that more than anyone, Black business owners had no idea that PPP even existed. In my day job, we helped many people get PPP, and I find it very interesting that the people in the inner city of Kansas City didn't even know it existed. And at this point, it's pretty much already over with. But again, this comes back to the part of we cannot continue to rely on the federal government to bail everyone out. Back in March, April, May, those were uncharted territories. That was a unique instance. But at this point, we can't just have the federal government keeping everyone afloat. So again, I say that's unconstitutional. We need to go back to sound money, balanced budget, stop spending so much.
Well, we should provide individuals first and foremost at least enough money to survive during this one in a lifetime pandemic, and that is $1,200 for every individual, and then on a weekly basis we would give an expansion to the existing state unemployment benefits of $600. And then, of course, we would ask that mortgage companies and banks not proceed with, foreclosures because of the reality that people don't have the dollars to pay their mortgages. So we think we've done not enough, but we've done about all that we can do and get approval from the Senate, and the president would have to sign the legislation. Well, we passed police reform from the House of Representatives, and it's sitting again on the desk of the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. But it should contain a number of provisions. One would be that no-knock police incursions into people's homes would be allowable. We need national standards, and that would be one of them. Also, we're going to require that we reestablish what's called methods and practices, whereby if a police department or some law enforcement unit is believed to have racial problems, we will do what we did in Ferguson when the Attorney General allowed the department to conduct an investigation, and we found that there was institutional racial problems in the city of Ferguson. In a town like Ferguson, we only had one member of the city council who was African American, and 2 out of 50 police officers were African Americans. And as a result of the investigation, the Justice Department found that they had some major problems. So we signed a consent decree, and the transformation is just so blatantly clear. The mayor of the city is an African American woman. There are 3 members of the city council who are African American. There are now substantially more African American police officers. So we think that is critically important for us to do in cities where it's warranted. And we are hoping that legislation can be approved. We think that it's something that will create at least a higher level of comfort in the country that police are responding to federal law, and communities are embracing it as well.
Again, police reform, again, that's a states' rights issue. That's an issue the states should resolve. There's nothing in the Constitution that determines how the police should act, especially if you read the history of policing and sheriffs across the country. A few different things I can get on board with immediately, though, in this discussion are no-knock warrants. That's the whole Breonna Taylor story. No-knock warrants need to go away. Also, military surplus going to your local, to the local police departments. While I understand that the police say that it helps them, being on the civilian side of this, it was very scary when you see that police surplus gear going, and not just the gear, but the half tracks and the vehicles as well. Those are two issues that I could definitely get on board with just right off the top. Now, another issue that not many people talk about, in fact, I haven't really heard anyone talking about this, is that I am not on board for cutting the police. I'm not on board for replacing them with social workers. Not only do we need more police officers who can spread out that workload, but we also need to consider the police officers' mental health. There's only one job in America where they give you a gun, taser, mace, and handcuffs, and they say, your job is so dangerous, you might need to use all of these. And if you have 2 or 3 or 4 calls in one night, and then you have to go back into the general public and pretend like everything is normal, there's some serious PTSD, and it's not even conspiracy or theory at this point, it's fact. You ask any police department, the post-traumatic side effect of being a police officer is crazy right now. I really want to see more states and cities focus on the mental health of their police officers. And then finally, I think that over the last 30 years, the US government has passed so many crime bills, like Joe Biden's famous 1994 crime bill, that the police across the country just have an unmanageable load. It's impossible to be a police officer and go to the T and take care of all of these laws that have been passed. I don't think we need to necessarily punish the police, whether it's defund or abolish or whatever people are saying today. I would rather go to DC and start repealing some of these laws, more criminal justice, more prison reform, things that don't put people in jail so quickly. The war on drugs, it's a complete failure. So why do we have the police going through and busting up peaceful people who are at their own home for this type of thing, as long as they're a small deal? There are some very, very sensible solutions that I don't see many people, excuse me, I don't see many people talking about at all. And that is the workload that's being put on the police officers. Yeah, this is going to be exactly what people may expect. You can pass as many laws as you want to when it comes to gun control, but you're not going to stop the issue. Over in England, they've completely banned guns and people just started stabbing each other. So they banned knives and now people run each other over in trucks. Banning a gun, even if it's common sense, is not going to stop the mental health crisis that we have in this country. I don't think we have a gun crisis in America. I think we have a massive mental health crisis in our country. And that's what's leading to a lot of this gun crime. It's also what's leading to a lot of drug abuse and that type of thing. So to answer the question, I'm not so sure that any more gun legislation or whatever it might be could be passed and actually make a dent.
Well, I think that I obviously am going to continue to support national background checks. We're talking about common sense gun laws, not anything that would trample down on the Second Amendment. I think that at a minimum we have, and frankly, the overwhelming majority of Americans support background checks. Believe it or not, that goes into the 80s in terms of percent of Americans who support background checks. I think that at some point we probably will need to take some of the weapons off the street that the police departments around the country believe should be removed, because in some instances the people who are in the eyesight of police officers are more heavily armed than the police. So I think that common sense things would be something that we should have. We can close some loopholes like at the gun shows, where you don't have to have a 30-day waiting period or anything. You can just walk in and buy a gun. We've got to stop that loophole. But that's where we are at this point. I don't think the country is ready to go much further than that. I would be, but the country is not. So in many ways, we have to respond to what the country wants and what we can do legislatively. Well, first of all, what I disagree with strongly and irreversibly is the fact that the Justice Department planned this program without speaking with any member of the Missouri Congressional Delegation. Senator Roy Blunt and I were together last week at a joint program here in Kansas City, and we both expressed, some distaste for the way that was done. I mean, just think, people in Kansas City were asking me, are federal law enforcement agents coming into your community? Well, I don't know. We haven't been told. And it wasn't something that impacted the two Democrats in our 8-member delegation. It was everybody. Nobody knew. And so we have some level of resentment for that. Even the FBI and the U.S. attorneys did say, I have to report, that it was something that should not have been done the way it was done. Now, if the federal law enforcement agents have been of value to the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department and the Sheriff's Department, I am just as happy as anybody could be. My hope is that issue is ultimately going to have to be dealt with by the mayor and city council. Where my role as a member of Congress begins is when the decision is made to send federal law enforcement agents in the community. And if that's the case, I'm going to support it if the mayor supports it, and if there is a role for them without bumping into or in any way creating problems with local law enforcement agents.
Yes, 110%. I remember when Operation Legend first came out and Emanuel Cleaver in Washington, D.C. signed on to an amendment to defund the entire operation. And then in only 2 weeks, they made 1,500 arrests, 90 of which were murders, a mountain of illegal guns, and a mountain of drugs, including 6 pounds of meth. And Emanuel Cleaver didn't want any of that to happen. I've spoken with the family of Legend. I've spoken with the grandfather, and they are so thankful. I knock doors every day, almost every day, and I hear people in the inner city Black community that are saying, I cannot live this way anymore. We can't have these we don't have enough police. We've got gun crimes all over the place, and they're telling me the same thing, that yes, they are thankful for Operation Legend. So yes, I think it's going very well. Now, when it first came out, a lot of people were afraid that goons in black clothes were going to jump out of a van and abduct people. Now, obviously, I'd be against some type of tyrannical police state like that, but these 200 federal agents came to Kansas City. They sped up investigations on crimes, and I think they're doing an amazing job. Actually, I have some notes on this one I'd like to read because, first off, it's unconstitutional, so I would actually support that. Well, now, how do you, the repeal that is, so how do you fix that? Well, I would suggest doing what a lot of conservative thought leaders have suggested for decades, which is making it easier for people to access healthcare. Now, Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act, hasn't made healthcare more affordable. Insurance has gone up, the cost has gone up, the quality has gone down. There are just as many people today without health insurance as there were before Obamacare. It's just that today there's an entirely new set of people without insurance. Now, firstly, people with pre-existing conditions completely should be covered, even if that means throwing them on Medicaid. That's something they can't help, but here are some ideas on what the president has done in the last 9 months that are going to be amazingly positive in the world of healthcare. An executive order requiring all medical providers to list out their prices. This is going to create a bunch of entrepreneurs to create price comparison tools. Don't be surprised if your insurance company incentivizes you on that as well. An executive order to stop price gouging of insulin and EpiPens. An executive order to fast track 1,200 generic drugs. He put together the right to try bill so that Americans can try experimental therapies that aren't yet approved by the FDA. Here's an executive order, favored nations clause to force international drug price competition. Here is Medicaid reform to stop overcharging and bring lawsuits to those who are committing fraud. And if you just Google that, you'll see dozens of cases in the last couple of years. And then finally, working to bring all medical supply chains back to the United States from China. All of these things are things that the president did that happened in the last 3 years. These are things and more that conservative thought leaders have been pushing for years, that everyone has been saying that's unrealistic. And now we can actually see some serious price and affordability with healthcare. Not only that, but it was just in the last year that Walmart put a headline out saying that now for $25, you can get a dental hygienist to clean and examine your teeth. That wasn't Obamacare, that was the free market. And so yes, in my opinion, less, not more federal government intervention is going to provide better health care.
I think those who are talking about repealing the Affordable Care Act are also talking about going against what the majority of Americans want. Gallup polling shows clearly that the majority of Americans support the ACA. And who in the world, this is amazing, who in the world would want to discontinue the only insurance we have in the middle of a pandemic that has already claimed almost 200 lives in the United States of America? And about 11.4 million Americans have this insurance. And right now they need it more than ever. Over 13 million Americans have lost their employment-based insurance because you worked at Jay's sandwich shop and it's closed, and all of the employees have been laid off. You have no insurance. And so it makes absolutely no sense to start a movement to wipe out the only insurance available that any American could get. And the worst part about this discussion is that people who are talking about disbanding or defunding the Affordable Care Act have not produced one single line of a new insurance program. And so what they're proposing is that we remove the ACA and replace it with nothing. And people are out here suffering already to the point that they can't afford to buy food. We have long lines of people standing around now trying to get food, people who are embarrassed because they've never had to do it in their lives. And then we're going to discontinue the Affordable Care Act right now. I think that is just about as foolhardy as one could get. So no, I am not going to do that. We would also be talking about knocking off people's who have previous health conditions, and that would just wipe out about 130 million Americans, including me, including a lot of people who watch this and their parents. And so that makes no sense. We are in the middle of an epidemic. And even if we were not, polling shows that the majority of Americans still want this. Well, actually, the role for the federal government is not as major as one would think. We have actually, instead of a national election, we have thousands of local elections because we actually don't have any national standards, something that I'm hoping to change after the new Congress is sworn in if I'm reelected. trying to create some national standards. But we did put money into the HEROES Act to supplement what we needed to do to support local election boards, including those here in Kansas City and Jackson County. But the federal government actually doesn't run any elections. And so what we would have to do is to provide local government with dollars to make sure that they could adequately and accurately pull off another election. Let me also add, we put money into the HEROES Act to support the Postal Service because we need desperately to have people who vote by mail be assured that their vote will get to the election board in a timely fashion. So what we've done or attempted to do nationally is to be supportive of the local effort.
That's another question that's kind of vague because there's many different directions I could go with this. So a couple right off the top of my head, we should absolutely not have mail-in voting. Absentee voting is very different from where the federal government or the precinct mails out a ballot and then just receives it back. We should be voting in person, especially you can see people. I was at Costco earlier and that place was shoulder to shoulder. If we can go to Costco and Home Depot and Walmart every day, we can go vote for one day. Secondly, if we want to talk about how to really protect elections, we should stop using electronic computer-based voting. We should go back to just ballots. But again, the question, does that mean protecting elections? Does that mean have the National Guard come out and guard? I don't really know about that. But if you're talking about just how to protect the trust in our election system, we should stop doing electronic computer-based voting. It should be on paper. And secondly, it should not be mail-in. I don't care if Joe Biden wins or if President Trump wins a re-election. If we do a full-on nationwide mail-in vote system this time, the other side is going to question the results and it's going to be even more unrest. It doesn't matter if it's Republican or Democrat. Here's the thing that Missourians can count on from Ryan Derks being their new representative. There has been a system in Washington, D.C. for years. It's Republican, it's Democrat, they both have blood on their hands. What you can count on is you're going to have the most outsider person you could possibly hope. I have no political office experience. I have no political office skeletons in my closet. I'm a 33-year-old American who doesn't care what your identity is. I simply care about making sure that Americans in America are protected. And that involves addressing the wars overseas and ending those. That it involves school choice and better schools. It involves bringing jobs back from China and overseas and bringing those good blue-collar union jobs back to our district. It also involves out in the rural area, bringing finally high-speed internet and high-speed telecom that's been promised for generations. If you vote for the other guy, that's fine, but you can expect someone who's made a very, very comfortable career of doing backstrokes through the swamp in DC. That's not what you're going to get with me. I'm not going there to make friends. And even the people that hate me can still write me messages on Facebook or Instagram, and I reply to all of them. That's what they can expect.
The same commitment that I have always made, and that is that I'm going to put the people in the 5th Congressional District first. It means that whether I carry the every little town in rural Missouri that I represent or not, I'm going to continue to work with those farming communities, helping to get things like a new water tower for one of the communities, Lexington, that was operating with a water system that most people would not tolerate. But of course, the dollars that they need are difficult to get. We were just able to help them get $6 million a couple of weeks ago. So I'm going to represent every aspect of this community, and we're proud that we were critically important in the establishment of a tri-caucus, tri-chamber. And the tri-chamber consists of the African-American business folk, the Latino chamber or Hispanic chamber, and LGBTQ chambers. They've all come together. We pulled everybody together and said, you know, we might have a better chance of helping, particularly during this coronavirus, if all three of you guys worked together, had a building, and you could help all of these small businesses who are having difficulty negotiating the paperwork that is required to get to participate in the PPP program. And so, well, they've been funded now, at least partially funded, up $350,000. We're going to continue to try to access dollars for them. But I'm going to promise, I represent everybody. I've done it since I came in day one. And we intend to continue that commitment and represent every component of this district, be they rural, black, white, brown, doesn't matter, short or tall. I intend to do that as I have done throughout my career.